us, to take our baggage, to take our burdens, to be near us, and to hold us tightly. But the punchline of this whole story is that Boaz and Ruth would become married and have a son, and that lineage would prove to be very special, wouldn't it? This child named Obed would become the grandfather of the little boy who would take a slingshot one day and throw it at a giant. This would be the grandfather of the boy who would become the king of Israel. Now, if you remember last week, Elimelech had a name, an English name he was called Elimelech because it meant God is king. Israel and God and king. Elimelech. And now, here he is, passed away, and all of a sudden it all comes true that his own grandson, Obed, would become in the lineage of the Messiah of the world. But it would come through this widow, a Moabite, not a Jew, a Moabite, a foreigner, who would follow Naomi everywhere she went. You remember last week, where you go, I will. Where you lodge, I will lodge. And we said last week, to lodge means where you'll be at night. True friends, true family, people who will stick by us, are people not only in the daylight, but people who will be with us in the dark. Your people will be my people. Maybe these really might not be the words of Ruth. I want to put a twist on this. What if those were the words of Yahweh, who says the same thing to us today? Where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people will be my people. So God uses this foreigner to take Ruth and take her under his wing, and he carries on this genealogy of God. Most of these other names in the genealogy of God, they're worthy. You're respected. But not this story. This is the story of a Moabite who would name her son Obed. And Obed would become the grandfather of the king. I want you to think about this story, redemption and restoration, and ask yourself, as I've asked myself this week, what is it in our lives that you would like to have restored? I used to like to go to Jackson and go into Restoration Hardware. And we just got it in the mail yesterday on it. That's a God thing. Restoration Hardware. You walk in and what is it? It's retro, isn't it? You go there and you can find Mr. Bubbles. You can find all kinds of things and furniture and little pieces for your home that you used to have in your house growing up. Part of that restoration is getting back to where things used to be, right? You're going back to where they once were. And that's what the gospel really does to us. That's what scriptures do. They say, wow, I want to be back the way I used to be. I want to be as God intended me to be. I want to be redeemed. I want to be restored. Now, some of you are really good with restoration. I imagine Jesus of Nazareth, as a carpenter, was probably pretty good at restoration. He took that which was present and he began to work back the layers until it got to its original intent. That's what God does for each of us. When we get dust on us, God has a pledge and he promises to wipe that dust clean. When we get broken and we get fractured and we get injured, God comes alongside of us and says, I am here to be your redeemer, your kinsman redeemer. I want to restore you. I want to be the restorer of life. True restoration. I think about the MSU Riley Center, and I think about what you and I have seen with our very own eyes, how this broken down opera house that you used to sneak into, or maybe that you even went to when you went up to the stores downtown. And it too was waiting for a kinsman redeemer. And friends like Billy Riley and Associates. And then all of a sudden the Queen City with a lady's face above the curtain, who was looking and searching And perhaps her name is Ruth. Peering down at the place once filled with song and dance, but for decades, this woman above this curtain was covered up in dust and decay. Until someone came along and redeemed it. Someone close like kin who cared. And today we waltz into that place and we marvel at restoration, at getting it back the way it used to be. To honor how God intended it to be. Nothing is impossible with God. Do you believe that? Nothing is impossible with God. God is the restorer of life. People might look at us and go, oh, they're not going to change. Woo, they're stuck the way they are. And God says, Remember a guy named Saul? I made him Paul. I can do anything. I can do all things. I can do all things. So what it is in your life, in my life, that would like to be restored right now? Who is it? What is it? What around us needs restoration? We're surrounded in a town full of restoration projects, aren't we? From City Hall to other places. Of saying, you know what? God's not through creating. God is putting on the original wallpaper of our soul and making us and inviting us to come back to life. Where others marvel one day, hopefully, and say, you know what? I remember how they used to be. But wow, have they improved. What a great honor that is. Because we don't get to take the credit, do we? We get to give God the credit. Because God is the restorer of life. God is the renewer of life. And God, through Jesus Christ, is the kinsman redeemer. So if you're wandering around your Dead Sea right now and you are really searching, I invite you to look for Jesus of Nazareth, Jesus Christ, around you, and to invite Him to be your restorer. You say, well, I did that back when I was a kid. I say, do it again. Do it again. Invite Him back in. For some who've been Christian a long time, you say, you know, I think I need to do that. I need to be rededicated. I need to be restored. I'll do my part, God. Would you do your part? God promises to do just that. So this really is a story of redemption. It's the theme of every story, every book, every movie, everything. And as I look around this room and I look at you, and you look at me, we know that that's really what life is all about, isn't it? It's about redemption. Don't give up. God's not through with us. Nothing is impossible with God. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and together we say, please stand with me for our song, Spirit Song, number 352.